The deep silence of the space station suddenly broke. Red lights started flashing, and the alarm screamed like something terrible was coming. Ryan stood near the control panel, looking at the incoming signals. His face turned pale. The Space Council had finally made their decision. They had sent a secret team to destroy Cadet 13. He had feared this day. The moment Cadet 13 started showing emotions, the Council began to panic. A hybrid with emotions was something they never wanted. To them, emotions meant weakness or danger. Ryan rushed toward the sleeping quarters where Cadet 13 and Mishka had been staying. Mishka was playing with a laser dot, while Cadet 13 sat silently, watching her with soft eyes. Something had changed in him. He was no longer the cold, silent being who arrived weeks ago. But Ryan didn't have time to explain. He looked Cadet 13 straight in the eyes. "They're coming. To kill you," he said. Cadet 13 blinked slowly. He didn't speak, but he stood up, tall and strong. For the first time, he placed a hand gently on Mishka's head. The cat purred softly. "We need to leave," Ryan said, grabbing a few devices and throwing them into a small bag. But before they could move, the station shook violently. An explosion rocked the lower deck. The secret kill team had arrived, faster than expected. Gunshots echoed through the metal corridors. Ryan pulled out his pulse pistol and ran. Cadet 13 followed silently, his eyes scanning every direction. Then, in the chaos, Mishka ran away. She was frightened by the noise and disappeared through a small vent. "Mishka!" Ryan shouted, trying to follow, but another blast threw him to the floor. He hit his head and screamed in pain. Blood ran down the side of his face. Cadet 13 turned back, grabbed him, and pulled him to safety. Ryan looked at him with wide eyes. "You have to go. Save yourself." But Cadet 13 didn't listen. His breathing changed. His body tensed. The cold steel in his DNA came alive. But this time, it was not for destruction. It was for protection. His senses sharpened. His muscles grew tighter. The war machine inside him was awake, but it had purpose now. He lifted Ryan and carried him through the fire-filled hallway. When 3 council soldiers appeared in front of them, Cadet 13 didn't hesitate. He moved like lightning, dodging lasers, knocking out weapons, disabling each attacker without killing them. He didn't need revenge. He needed safety, for Ryan and for Mishka. The team wasn't ready for this. They had expected a killer, not a protector. He reached the med bay and laid Ryan gently on the table. Then he sealed the door behind them. Ryan's vision was blurry, but he could see the shadow of Cadet 13 standing like a soldier, guarding him. "You're not what they said," Ryan whispered, half-conscious. Cadet 13 didn't answer, but his silence was no longer empty. It had meaning. It had care. Outside, footsteps came closer. Another squad of soldiers had tracked them. Cadet 13 turned to the door. He took a deep breath. Then he opened it and faced them. The soldiers fired, but he moved like air, silent, deadly, controlled. He fought not with anger, but with purpose. Each move was calculated. Each punch was precise. He disabled every soldier, but never killed. Inside, Ryan could only watch through a small monitor. His body hurt, but his heart felt something else. Hope. This creature, once called a monster, was saving his life. But where was Mishka? Suddenly, a voice came through the radio. Static. Then a whisper. "Mishka found. Engineering bay. Alive." Relief filled Ryan's chest, but danger still surrounded them. Cadet 13 returned, scratches on his arms but calm in his eyes. He walked to Ryan and gently picked him up again. They moved fast, this time heading toward the escape pod. On the way, they found Mishka hiding behind a console, her eyes wide. Cadet 13 bent down and extended a hand. Mishka jumped into his arms without fear. They reached the pod. Cadet 13 placed Ryan and the cat inside first. Then he paused. Ryan looked at him. "You're coming. That's an order." Cadet 13 tilted his head, then stepped inside. The pod launched seconds later, flying away from the burning station. Behind them, the council's team was left broken, defeated, not by a killer, but by something they never expected. A protector. Cadet 13 sat quietly in the pod, Mishka curled up beside him. Ryan smiled through the pain. "They called you dangerous," he said softly, "but you just saved everything." And for the first time, Cadet 13 smiled back. A small smile, but real. He had escaped death, betrayal, and the prison of his own design. But more than that, he had escaped the label they gave him. He was no longer Cadet 13. He was something more. Someone more. The cold wind of the artificial atmosphere blew gently across the landing pad as a small old ship touched down. The station guards stood in silence. They were expecting a full rescue team, maybe a military squad with weapons and scanners. But only one man stepped out. He was tall, calm, and wore a long black coat covered in dust. Beside him, walking like a king, was a gray cat with bright green eyes. The guards looked at each other in confusion. Was this a joke? The man introduced himself as Captain Ryan. His voice was firm but friendly. "I'm here for Cadet 13, he said. The guards almost laughed. "You're here to do what? With a cat?" Ryan didn't explain. He just smiled and handed them the official permission papers. The stamp of the Galactic Council was real. They had no choice but to let him through. Inside the station, Cadet 13 sat in his glass cell. He didn't move. He had been locked up for years now. Scientists and soldiers came and went, but no one had ever been able to reach him. He never spoke. He never even looked at them. He was more like a ghost than a soldier. The walls around him were made of the strongest metal, and drones watched him day and night. When Ryan entered the control room, the lead officer warned him. "He's dangerous. He doesn't understand feelings. Don't get too close." Ryan didn't respond. Instead, he looked through the glass. Cadet 13 sat still, like a statue. But Ryan noticed something others missed. His eyes were not empty. They were searching for something. "I need to talk to him." "Alone," Ryan said. The officers protested, but the council orders were clear. Ryan and the cat, Mishka, were allowed to interact with Cadet 13 without interference. The doors opened with a loud hiss. Ryan stepped inside, followed by Mishka. The moment the cat walked in, Cadet 13's eyes moved. Just a little, but enough. Ryan sat down on the floor, a few meters away. He didn't speak. He just let Mishka walk around. The cat, fearless, went straight to Cadet 13. She sniffed his boots, then his hands. Cadet 13 didn't move. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mishka climbed into his lap. The room outside went silent. No one had ever touched Cadet 13. No one had even gotten close. But the cat sat peacefully, and Cadet 13 looked down at her, not with confusion, but curiosity. After a few minutes, Ryan finally spoke. "You're not a weapon. You're just a man, and I think you've been alone for too long." Cadet 13 didn't reply, but his breathing changed. It was slower, calmer. Ryan took a small device from his coat. It looked like a scanner, but different. He placed it near his own head, then near Cadet 13's. "This reads brain signals," he said. "Emotions, thoughts, patterns. Not words, just feelings." The screen blinked. A wave of colors danced across it. Ryan's brain showed signals of trust, calm, and hope. Then he moved the scanner to Cadet 13. The officers in the control room expected nothing. Cadet 13 had always tested as blank. But now, the colors appeared. First weak, then stronger. Confusion. Fear, then curiosity. And one more thing. Connection. Ryan looked into his eyes. "You feel. They said you don't. But they were wrong. Outside, the lead officer spoke into a communicator. He's reacting. I repeat, Cadet 13 is showing signs of emotional activity. The council would not be happy. Later that night, Ryan was given a small room in the station. Mishka curled up on his bed. Cadet 13 remained in his cell, but his eyes kept glancing toward the vent, the same one Mishka had used earlier. For the first time, he wasn't looking at the door as an escape. He was waiting for something, or someone. The next day, Ryan requested a test mission. Let me take him out, just once. A small trip into the asteroid field. Let's see what happens when he's free. The council officers protested again. He'll kill you. But the council command allowed it. One test, one chance. Cadet 13 was released from his cell for the first time in years. His hands were not in cuffs. Ryan walked beside him with calm confidence. Mishka followed quietly behind. As they entered the shuttle, Ryan looked at him again. If you wanted to kill me, you already would have. But I think you want something else. Cadet 13 didn't answer, but in his eyes, something had started. A spark. A change. The shuttle lifted off. Unknown to them, someone was already watching from deep space. The council didn't trust this mission, and someone was planning to end it before the truth got out. The shuttle soared through the cold expanse of space, leaving the station behind. Ryan sat in the cockpit, his eyes focused on the control panel in front of him. Cadet 13 sat quietly in the seat beside him, still silent, as always. Mishka curled up on the small dashboard, blinking lazily in the soft glow of the control lights. It was almost peaceful. Almost. Ryan glanced at Cadet 13. His eyes had changed since yesterday, but Ryan wasn't sure if it was the cat's presence or something else. Either way, there was something different in the hybrid's eyes now. Something that felt more human. We're heading into the asteroid belt, Ryan said, breaking the silence. Just a quick scan to test the new equipment. Nothing dangerous. You can relax. Cadet 13 didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on the view outside. The asteroids, small and large, drifted in slow, steady patterns through the black void. It was like a giant cosmic dance, and Cadet 13's eyes followed it with a strange intensity, like he was searching for something among the rocks. Ryan tried not to watch him too closely, but it was hard not to. The man who had once been an uncontrollable weapon was now sitting next to him, looking out at the stars. Was it possible? Could he really be changing? Suddenly, the calm was shattered. An alarm blared, red lights flashing throughout the shuttle. Ryan's hands flew to the controls, heart racing. What the? From the corner of his eye, he saw Cadet 13 tense. His body was like a coil, ready to snap. The hybrid's eyes shifted toward the rear of the shuttle, then to the side, where the sensors were showing something that shouldn't be there. Another ship, closing in fast. Looks like we got company, Ryan muttered, his voice tight. Stay calm. I'll try to shake them off. But as he spun the controls, the ship behind them didn't move away. Instead, it grew closer faster. Ryan's pulse quickened. This wasn't a random attack. Someone knew they were out here. Before he could react, a jolt rocked the shuttle, throwing both of them forward. Ryan's hand slammed against the control panel as the ship went into a freefall. The view outside spun wildly. An explosion rocked the rear of the shuttle, shaking it from side to side. Cadet 13 didn't flinch. He didn't scream or panic. Instead, he stood up swiftly, his movements sharp and precise. Ryan barely had time to react as the hybrid moved past him, grabbing Mishka from the dashboard and holding her securely under his arm. Wait! Ryan shouted, but Cadet 13 was already at the door, pressing a button to release the shuttle's emergency weapon systems. Ryan watched in shock as Cadet 13 swiftly took control of the situation. The hybrid reached out, gripping the weapons controls with calm authority. His eyes flicked from one sensor to another, analyzing the situation faster than Ryan could follow. The enemy ship was now right on top of them, its weapons primed for another attack. With no hesitation, Cadet 13 fired the shuttle's weapons. A burst of bright light erupted from the shuttle's turrets, sending a blast that hit the attacking ship squarely on its side. It swerved violently, losing its momentum, but it wasn't enough to stop it completely. Another blast from the enemy ship came in, this time grazing the shuttle's hull. The ship rattled again, and Rayan could hear the stress of metal straining under the pressure. But it wasn't enough to break through. "Hold on," Rayan shouted. He pushed the shuttle forward, trying to escape the firestorm, but he knew the odds were getting worse. They were outmatched, and time was running out. Cadet 13 didn't say a word, but his hands moved like lightning, controlling the shuttle's weapons with precision. He fired once more, and the enemy ship's engine exploded, sending it spiraling away. The space around them was filled with a cloud of debris. Rayan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "We did it," he said, a mix of disbelief and relief in his voice. But Cadet 13 wasn't done. He was still watching the sensors, still alert, even as the enemy ship drifted farther away. His attention shifted again, and for a moment, Rayan saw something new in his eyes. A glint of protectiveness. The cat, Mishka, had hopped down from Cadet 13's arm, and now sat beside him, purring softly. It was strange, but in that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. Cadet 13 wasn't just following orders. He wasn't just a weapon. He was someone who could protect. Rayan's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at the hybrid. "You're not what I thought you were," he said softly, more to himself than to Cadet 13. The hybrid didn't respond, but Rayan noticed his eyes soften just a little. For the first time, it wasn't just a machine staring back at him. There was a person there, a person who had the power to choose. And for whatever reason, Cadet 13 had chosen to protect him. They were in the middle of space, alone, with nothing but the cold stars surrounding them. But for the first time, Rayan didn't feel alone. With Cadet 13 beside him, he knew they had a chance. But what had started as a simple mission to test equipment had turned into something much more. Someone somewhere had tried to kill them, and it was clear now. There was more going on than anyone realized. Someone was hunting Cadet 13, and they would stop at nothing to finish what they started. Rayan's mind raced. The attack had been too coordinated, too precise. This wasn't a random event. The Council's enemies were closer than they thought. "We need to get back to the station," Rayan said, gripping the controls tighter. "There's more to this than we know." Cadet 13 stood behind him, watching. The cat curled up in his lap again, content and calm. And for the first time, Rayan felt the weight of what they were really up against. He wasn't just trying to save Cadet 13 anymore. They were both in danger, and there was no turning back. The journey back to the station was a tense one. The shuttle's engines hummed quietly, but the silence between Rayan and Cadet 13 felt heavy. The recent attack had left them both shaken, though neither of them spoke of it. Rayan's mind raced with questions. Who had sent that ship? Why had they attacked them so suddenly? And most importantly, why did it feel like Cadet 13 had known what to do all along? Rayan glanced at Cadet 13, who sat calmly beside him, his hands resting on his lap, his eyes staring at nothing in particular. Mishka, curled up in the hybrid's lap, seemed to sense the tension in the air, her small purrs filling the otherwise silent shuttle. "We need answers," Rayan muttered to himself, more to break the silence than anything else. But the hybrid didn't respond. It wasn't like he expected an answer anyway. Cadet 13 rarely spoke. His silence was not a barrier. It was just his way of being. As they entered the outer rim of the station's docking bay, the familiar sight of the station grew larger in the view screen. Rayan couldn't shake the feeling that something big was happening behind the scenes. The attack had been no random accident. It was too well coordinated, too precise. And no one knew Cadet 13 better than Rayan, even if the hybrid didn't fully understand himself yet. Once they landed, Ryan immediately contacted the station's command center. "We need to talk to the council. Something's wrong." The response was immediate. "Meet us in the debriefing room in 30 minutes." Ryan turned to Cadet 13, who was now standing, slowly, as if he had all the time in the universe. He moved like a machine, but there was something different about him. In the way he looked at Mishka, the way he moved, there was a certain calmness that hadn't been there before. And Ryan realized something. The hybrid was changing. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the weapon they'd built him to be. They walked through the station, passing guards and soldiers, most of whom didn't even glance at them. The hybrid had become a ghost to everyone, just like Ryan had predicted. It wasn't until they entered the debriefing room that things started to shift. The council was waiting for them. The room was cold, metallic, exactly how Ryan remembered it. A few familiar faces greeted him, but their eyes were cold, calculating. They didn't look at Cadet 13. They looked at him with suspicion. The room was colder than usual. The moment Ryan and Cadet 13 walked in, the atmosphere shifted. The council sat behind a long metallic table, their eyes fixed on the hybrid, but there was no warmth in their gaze. Ryan could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. He had done what he could, but now the truth had to come out. "Cadet 13, the council leader said, his voice low and commanding, "your existence is a threat to the stability of the entire fleet. Your actions today have proven that." Ryan could feel his heartbeat quicken. He knew where this was heading. They had always feared Cadet 13, always treated him like a weapon, not a person. The council didn't care about the changes he was going through, about the protector he was becoming. They only cared about control. "We've decided," the leader continued, "that your mission is over. You will be decommissioned." Ryan's eyes widened. "What? No, you can't just." But before he could finish, a voice interrupted him. "You knew this was coming, Captain. We didn't build him to be a soldier with emotions. He's a tool, and tools can be disposed of." Ryan could hardly believe what he was hearing. The very thing he'd been fighting for, the chance to protect Cadet 13, to see him as something more than a weapon, was being torn away. "Don't do this," Ryan said, stepping forward, his voice shaking with frustration. "He's not just a machine. He's more than that. You can't just." But the council wasn't listening. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You're too emotionally attached, Captain. This is about the safety of everyone on the station. If Cadet 13 is allowed to live, he'll only be a threat." Ryan felt a surge of anger. He had been warned about this, but he didn't think it would come so soon. They were about to destroy Cadet 13, the very thing that had the potential to change everything. His mind raced, but before he could react, the doors to the room suddenly slammed shut. A loud alarm blared throughout the station, signaling an emergency lockdown. Ryan turned quickly, his heart racing. "What's going on?" The council didn't answer. The room filled with the sounds of soldiers stepping forward, guns raised. Cadet 13's posture changed. Ryan saw it immediately. The hybrid's body went tense, his eyes narrowing in on the approaching soldiers. Mishka jumped down from his arms and ran to hide behind a chair, sensing the danger. "Get ready," Ryan whispered to himself. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing. Cadet 13 wasn't going down without a fight. The first soldier moved toward them, weapon raised, but before he could even aim, Cadet 13 was already there. With a speed that Ryan couldn't track, the hybrid grabbed the soldier's arm, twisting it behind his back and throwing him into the wall with a loud crash. "Stop," the council leader shouted. "That's an order." But it was too late. Cadet 13 wasn't listening anymore. His instincts had kicked in. He wasn't just reacting out of fear or anger. He was protecting himself and Ryan. He was no longer the weapon the council had tried to control. The next soldier lunged forward, but Cadet 13 was quicker. He dodged the attack and used the soldier's momentum against him, flipping him over and knocking him out cold. Ryan stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The hybrid's movements were precise, methodical. He was a machine in the best sense, a protector, not a killer. But the council wasn't ready to accept this. They weren't ready for him to change. Enough, the leader barked, signaling for the rest of the soldiers to advance. But as they moved in, the ground beneath them suddenly shook. The walls buzzed with energy as a new voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "This is command. All personnel are to evacuate the station immediately. A critical breach has occurred. Repeat, all personnel evacuate." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. What was going on? The council's faces grew pale. "No," the leader said, "this can't be happening." But it was happening. The station was under attack by someone or something far more dangerous than they had expected. The alarms grew louder, and Ryan could see the panic in the council's eyes. They were losing control. "Get to the escape pods," the leader shouted, rising to his feet. Cadet 13 didn't wait for orders. He turned to Ryan, his eyes scanning the room for a way out. Mishka was already by his side, her fur bristling. The hybrid reached out, grabbing Ryan's arm with surprising gentleness for someone who had just been a weapon. Without another word, Cadet 13 led Ryan out of the debriefing room. The hallways were chaos. People running in every direction. Explosions rocking the station from deep within. The station was falling apart. "We need to move now," Ryan shouted, but Cadet 13 didn't need to be told. He moved swiftly, pushing through the panicked crowd, heading toward the docking bay where the escape pods were. The further they went, the more dangerous it became. The station's lights flickered, and the corridors were filled with smoke. Ryan could hear the distant sound of explosions as parts of the station crumbled under the attack. But through it all, Cadet 13 stayed calm, his every move calculated to keep them safe. They reached the docking bay, only to find that the pods were already being launched by the council, who were abandoning the station without a second thought. Ryan knew that if they didn't leave now, they would be trapped. "Come on," Ryan said urgently, pulling Cadet 13 toward one of the last remaining pods. They had no time to waste. As they entered the pod, Ryan's mind raced. The council had betrayed them, but Cadet 13 was more than they had ever imagined. And together, they were going to survive this. Not as enemies, not as weapons, but as something more, partners in a fight for survival. The pod launched into the blackness of space, leaving the broken station behind. But the war was far from over. The escape pod shot through space, a tiny speck against the vast, dark canvas of the universe. Inside, Ryan sat quietly, his mind racing with everything that had just happened. The station was gone. The council had betrayed them. And Cadet 13, no longer just a weapon, was sitting beside him, calm as ever. Ryan looked at the hybrid, who was staring out the small window of the pod, his expression unreadable. Mishka sat curled up in his lap, purring softly. It was strange how something as small as the cat could bring a sense of peace in the middle of chaos. But Ryan understood. The bond between Cadet 13 and Mishka was more than just companionship. It was the one connection the hybrid had that was purely his own. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked softly, unsure of what else to say. Cadet 13 didn't immediately respond. His eyes remained fixed on the stars outside, lost in thought. But then, finally, he turned his gaze toward Ryan. His expression was calm, but there was a depth in his eyes that Ryan hadn't seen before. It was as if the hybrid was coming to understand something new about himself. I don't know," Cadet 13 said, his voice low and uncertain. It was the first time Ryan had heard him speak so openly. "I don't know what I am anymore." Ryan nodded. He understood. For years, Cadet 13 had been trained to fight, to kill, to follow orders. But everything had changed in an instant. The council had tried to control him, to use him as a tool of destruction. But now, Cadet 13 was free. The question was, what would he do with that freedom? "We're in this together now," Ryan said, his voice steady. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out. Cadet 13 didn't respond immediately, but his eyes softened. It was a small change, but it meant something. For the first time, Rayan saw a flicker of hope in the hybrid's eyes, a glimpse of the person he was becoming. The pod's control panel beeped, interrupting the silence. Rayan quickly glanced at the display, seeing the signal from an unknown ship approaching. His heart skipped a beat. Was it the Council? Had they found them already? Rayan quickly activated the communication system. A familiar voice crackled through the static. "This is Captain Xander of the Star Hunter. We've been tracking you since your escape from the station. Are you in need of assistance?" Rayan's eyes widened in surprise. The Star Hunter. He had heard of them. An independent mercenary group with a reputation for getting the job done. But why would they be helping them? "We could use some help," Rayan said cautiously. "We need a safe place to regroup." There was a brief pause before Captain Xander's voice came through again. "Understood. Set your course for the coordinates I'm sending you. We'll meet you there." Rayan looked at Cadet 13, who had been listening quietly. "Looks like we've got a new mission," he said, trying to lighten the mood. "Let's see where this takes us." Cadet 13 didn't respond, but Rayan could see the determination in his eyes. Whatever was coming next, they would face it together. The pod adjusted its course, following the coordinates sent by Captain Xander. The silence between them was comfortable now, even though the danger wasn't over. The Council's betrayal still weighed heavily on Rayan's mind. But there was something else, something deeper, that he couldn't ignore. The hybrid was more than just a soldier now. He was a protector. And as they drifted through space, Rayan couldn't help but feel that they were on the brink of something bigger than either of them could have imagined. Hours passed as they flew toward the coordinates, and Rayan couldn't help but notice the changes in Cadet 13. The way he moved, the way he interacted with the world, it was different now. He wasn't just a weapon anymore. He was becoming his own person, with his own choices and his own path to follow. As the Star Hunter ship appeared on the scanner, Rayan felt a mix of relief and unease. The mercenaries had their own motives, and Rayan didn't fully trust them. But right now, they didn't have many options. They had to take the risk. The Star Hunter docked with their pod, and a small team of mercenaries entered the pod, led by Captain Xander. He was a tall man with a weathered face, his eyes sharp and calculating. "I'm Captain Xander," he said, his voice gruff. "We've been keeping an eye on the Council for a while now. They've got some big plans, and you too." He glanced at Cadet 13 and then back at Rayan. "You're right in the middle of it." Rayan stood up, trying to hide his concern. "What do you mean?" Xander looked at him seriously. "The Council has been experimenting with more than just soldiers. They've been trying to create an army of hybrids, like him." He nodded toward Cadet 13. "And I don't think you're the only ones they've sent after." Cadet 13's eyes hardened at the mention of other hybrids. His posture stiffened, his body ready for whatever came next. It was clear he had his own questions, but right now, they all shared one goal: survival. "The Council won't stop," Rayan said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "They'll keep hunting us until they get what they want." Captain Xander's gaze grew intense. "Exactly. But we got information. Something that could stop them. You two are key to ending this. If we want to bring down the Council, we'll need to work together." Rayan looked at Cadet 13, and for the first time since everything started, he felt a surge of hope. The road ahead would be dangerous, filled with enemies and betrayals. But together, they might have a chance. As the mercenaries prepared the ship for departure, Rayan turned to Cadet 13. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We have a long way to go." Cadet 13 nodded silently, his eyes focused on the distant stars outside the window. The hybrid had found his purpose, and it wasn't just about surviving. It was about protecting what mattered most, and with Rayan by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. The stars ahead seemed to promise something new, something more than just fighting and running. They were on the path to something bigger, something that could change the universe forever. Together, they would face it all. And for the first time, Rayan believed it was possible.